Hi everyone, and welcome back to our series on talking with people living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. I'm here again with Vicki and Peter, and my name is Lauren. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about having a family and schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So I guess I want to just open it up to what has your experience been like with having a family?
Well, for me, it was an incredible growing experience for my children to have somebody for their whole life, or well, for the life that they remember, having a disability. It's made them more compassionate, but also more resilient. So there's that side. I got to watch them grow up, and they got to watch me grow up, and I'm still watching them grow, and they're still watching me grow. So there's that continuity of I went from being the caregiver, like a healthy caregiver and the parent, where now we're more friends, and there's give and take, ebb and flow within the relationship.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 3 children, age 16, 23, and 24.
Okay.
And then I have 2 grandchildren,
Oh wow.
age 2 and 7, yeah.
Great.
So it's been a wonderful experience and still is. It's a growing experience. There's been ups and downs, and there have been where I get stressed out with parenting, where when I was married, where I'd go to the hospital for 12 to 24 hours and someone would just talk me down, like a psychiatric nurse or a resident psychiatrist would just talk me down and get me refocused, and then I'd go back home and things would go pretty well. We had, as a family, we had sort of a plan in place for my low days or my low weeks or my low months, and my children, in a healthy way again, picked up and supported their mom and I during those lower times. But the thing was that I did find is the happy times I'd get really happy, and then the stressful times I'd get really low. So there was that stress on my children. So far I can say that they've overcome it quite well. And again, getting back to how having a parent with a disability in your life, it made them more resilient and also more compassionate.
Yeah. So were you diagnosed when you had them?
I was diagnosed, my oldest child was about 1.5 years, and my youngest child was maybe 6 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
And then through support and me following a treatment plan, the mother of my children and I decided to have one more child, and that's where the 16-year-old son comes from. And we also had a child that was miscarried prior to my son. So that was a very unique experience, because I withdrew to the point where I wasn't even talking to the mother, my wife and kids at all, because I didn't know what to do. And then at some point, somebody came into my wife and I's life and got us talking, and then we worked things through and grieved together. And that's when we realized, you know what, just because we lost a child doesn't mean we can't have another child. And so then we had another child. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. But
it's been great. I have to tell you, it's been great. Like at school concerts, summer activities, parent teacher. It's quite a growing experience for any parent. But to do that on a routine basis year after year, it's one of the great achievements of my life.
Great, thanks.
So I do not have any children yet. I'm still unsure about whether or not if I am going to start a family or not. My main concern is getting pregnant while having the illness and while being on medication. There's not a lot of research on antipsychotics and pregnancy, so obviously you can't force a pregnant lady to be on an antipsychotic to get test results and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a very small amount of certain drugs that they've been on, and what happens when they're pregnant. There's concerns about the baby's health, obviously, when you're on antipsychotics and being pregnant. That is concerning. They would ideally, I've asked my doctor, and ideally they would want you to be off all your medication, and that itself is also scary as well, because it's either which one would you prefer, possibly having defects or something wrong with the baby, or being ill and having something possibly worse happen with the baby and the mother. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that I'm not quite sure if we're going to be going that route or not. We haven't looked into too much of it because I still feel like I'm still quite young. I'm 26. I don't feel like I need to have a kid right at this moment. My husband would like a family eventually, but it's something we have to discuss in depth about and like see what our options are, because there's other options too, like adoption or surrogacy, that are available. But it's hard to like decide whether or not you want to do it the natural way or the regular way people most do. And it's just, there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen, right? So I haven't decided on whether or not I'm going to start a family or not, or if we're going to remain child-free, or if we're going to go for the adoption route or surrogacy. There's a lot of options that we have to kind of look into, but we're just not ready for that stage at this point. I just got well again, so I don't want to go off my meds and try to get pregnant and then see how that goes. It's a lot of risk to that, because I don't want him to take care of me and a baby at the same time, right? Where if I'm not mentally well and not there, like that's not going to be good for the baby or him, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things that you have to really discuss about if you want to do that, right?
There's a lot to consider.
There's a lot to consider, yeah. And there's, again, a lot of uncertainty about certain things, right? So it's one of those pick or choose kind of things, and we're just not at that point yet in our relationship to do that.
Yeah. So for me, I guess I haven't really talked too much on this channel about my family, but I have two amazing little kids in my life who are 4 and 6, and they are my partner's kids biologically, but I'm becoming and like increasingly having more of a parental figure in their life, which has been really, really wonderful, and kind of has like addressed some of the concerns that I had around carrying a child myself, with the illness and with the medications that I'm on and that kind of stuff. So having two children in my life that I didn't give birth to has been really, really good in that sense. But we are talking about having a child of our own together in the future, near future. So yeah, navigating a lot of what you were talking about medications and pregnancy, about what it's going to look like having kids full time, and my illness, managing my illness, and what that will look like. So yeah, there's a lot to consider and a lot to think about. Did you have any fears, Peter, before having kids, or?
Well, my first two kids were born before I was diagnosed. Right. But with my son, it was more, for me, it was more about could I handle another child or not? Yeah. And I did pretty well, I would say, and certainly drew on family support and community support. That was, because I couldn't do it on my wife at the time was working full time and extra, so she wasn't able to offer as much support because we had to have the family fed. So then there was a community of faith that was involved. Her family was fairly supportive. I got some encouragement from my side of the family, and then greater community with friends all helping us out. So it's really true, it takes a village to raise a child. But with support for both of you, it just get the support system built up first so that it's a smooth transition.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for you it was a little different because you didn't have to bear it.
Yes.
I also worry about them getting the illness themselves, right?
Yeah, that's another really big concern.
That's like, do I bring in a child that may suffer with this illness? Like you got to think about the child as well, in the fact that they may end up getting the illness too, right? And is that fair to pass that on, or you know, do you want to deal with that kind of thing? Not that you wouldn't deal with it with your kid, but would you want to have a child knowing that that's a possibility, right? Or even bring a child when you know you're unwell or going to be unwell? If like, do you want them to experience when you're unwell, kind of thing, right? Like, I guess it depends on like how bad your illness is. If you have a child with you, like, I don't want to have a child like experience me when I'm unwell because I feel like if I can't take care of the child, I don't want them to blame themselves.
I also worry about like resentment in the future.
Yeah, that's
About like a parent with an illness that like could affect their presence in their child's life, or could affect a multitude of things.
yeah.
Just future resentment, or just
I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is like
Yeah.
the future resentment, or the future thinking that like maybe I was the reason
Blaming themselves.
why my mom was sick, because I feel like that could be a thing, because I felt like, like a lot of people, like I came from a divorced, well, not a divorced family, but like a split family, and a lot of times I was thinking like, why did they leave? Like, why was it my fault? I thought that as a kid, and I know it's not true, but kids think how kids think. But yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to what you were saying about being afraid of passing it on, because that's a huge fear for me. And I kind of came to a point in my life when I was a little bit younger and before I had met Rob, my partner now, where I was like, I'm not going to have kids because I don't want to pass on my illness. I don't want to inflict the pain that I felt onto another human being. But through like reflection and like thinking about how I've learned to manage my own illness, I've kind of come to learn or think about it in the sense of 1 in 100 people have schizophrenia, right? So of those 1 in 100 people, wouldn't we be the best people to raise
Yes.
them?
Yeah.
So
that's
wouldn't they
We'd
be lucky?
the most understanding
We
of
would
that,
we would be able to
right?
help them learn how to manage it the best from our own experience and from understanding what they're going through a little bit better. So coming from that with a little bit more empathy, I guess, kind of helped me wrap my head around that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Peter. Yeah.
My children aren't bitter that I was ill. They're more bitter at lost opportunities as a family unit.
Yeah.
However, they don't blame me for being ill and their struggles, or they don't blame their mom for having to work full time and their struggles, because the biggest thing was my wife at the time and I were very open about the illness I had and what was being done about it. So we offered a lot of reassurance, like, okay, Daddy's in the hospital, he's going to be there for 2 to 3 weeks or maybe more, but we're going to stick together as a family and we're going to work through this. And again, that's where I talked to you too about having a really big support system in place, because then women from the community of faith would bring over meals, family and friends would come by and pick up the cleaning where I would do it, and there was just that huge support there. So with that huge support there in advance, really there's no reason why a person with schizoaffective disorder can't have children.
Yeah. And that's great to hear that.
That is good to hear.
Yeah.
That is good. It makes me feel a little bit more at ease about the whole situation, and just it's still a pretty big decision to do, especially with the struggles that you have of bearing the child and the medications and all that. Yeah.
So like that aside, with the 2 kids that I have in my life right now, I've kind of come to learn what you're learning about, like, you can still be incredibly present in their life. You can still be a great parental figure in their life. You can still be a great parent even with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. And I think that's really important to convey to people. You almost have an extra skill set to present to your kids as well, with like increased compassion, increased empathy as a result of your illness, I feel.
Yes, that's the way it has been with my children. They can empathize more with people who struggle, whether it's homeless or pick any marginalized group, and if someone from that marginalized group comes into their life, they have more empathy, because it's like, hey, I struggle too with some stressful stuff in my life and I've overcome it.
Yeah.
And
Just more empathy for everyone. Yeah. Are there any other comments you have about what the family dynamic is like living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or anything like that?
I just kind of emphasize enough just to have if you're going to have children, just have the support system there and have a really deep support system, so that with schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, it's not a matter of if, but when things go wrong, there's going to be a whole community there to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any other comments, honestly.
Cool.
Just maybe do your research for if you are planning on becoming pregnant with the illness, and make sure you have your support system in medical sense as well, for your mental health and your well-being. Make sure you're being monitored and stuff like that for that kind of thing.
So like when we're thinking about becoming pregnant, we've opened up the conversation already with our GP and or my GP and my psychiatrist and whatnot about what that would look like, what the concerns are, what the medical options are in terms of medications and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, having those conversations as early as you can and just being as educated as you can be about that kind of stuff, I think is really important.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can include this or not, but it's like I'm completely clueless to the fact of the pressure that's on women in general, but certainly with a mental health concern, the pressure that's the added layer of pressure where it's like, do I give birth? Do I conceive? And what's it going to be like the birth process and the postpartum process? That just doesn't exist with a man, regardless of mental health concerns or not.
Yeah, so there's a lot of layers.
Yeah, fascinating to hear from women.
Yeah.
It's great to hear your perspective, having raised children who are now adults and mostly adults. And so thank you both for sharing.
You're welcome.
It's really great. That was our conversation around having a family with schizophrenia while living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for watching and have a great day. Bye.